Good morning, everyone. Mike Shrews with the Antler Collector, and today I'm going to give you a rundown of what is actually the original Kansas King. So, from my understanding, the Kansas King typicals were discovered first seen in the late winter months, fall of 1992. Back in 1991, in this book put out and published by Odie Sudbeck, if you look in the very back of it, you'll see where it says the Kansas King right here. And that's a picture of it. And it was named the Kansas King prior to the Kansas King typical ever being discovered. And I remember back in the day I had a talk with Odie about this, and I remember saying to him, those are actually the real Kansas King, the originals. He said, yeah, they are. So, make a long story short, the original Kansas King is what is now known as the bath sheds. I'll tell you my story from the very beginning. This might be a little long video here, but I feel like it's an important story to hear. Back in the late 80s, about 1988, it would have had to have been 88 by the time the sheds were found, when they were found. I was on a school bus, and one of my best friends, my neighbor, Justin Rozier, he said, man, you ought to see this antler that my brother's holding. Dad took a picture of him holding this huge antler. He said, I'll bring the picture on the bus and show you. So within a couple of days he did. And this would have been 1988. And this is the picture. He brought like 4 of them on the bus, and this is the picture I see right here. Kind of hard. Oh, it's terrible. You can't really see it. Well, it's a picture of a young kid holding a gigantic whitetail shed. And that is it right there. It's, let me try something here. I'm going to turn this down. Okay, maybe it'll focus now. Yeah. So anyway, so that's the shed antler I saw. And I remember thinking, my goodness, that is amazing. I mean, look at all those points. Here's another view of it. I mean, just an incredible antler. Well, and then real quick, I'll show you this. Here's 2 more pictures. So these were the pictures I first saw of it in 1988 while riding the school bus. As crazy as this may sound, I'm pretty sure that same year I saw this deer. As crazy as that may sound. We were going down I-70, and we were going up a steep hill, only 2.5, 3 miles by the crow flies from where this deer sheds were found. And I look off to the south as we're going up the hill. It was raining, and all of a sudden I see just a doe standing there, and then right there by her was this enormous buck. And I remember it had this giant tall rack. And all I could think of is it looked like my favorite deer from when I was a kid was the Kenny Fowler and the Bruce Jameson buck. It looked like that. The antlers looked black. They were just tall and loaded with points. And I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it was this deer. This would have been this year right here. Those incredible antlers. And this is the first set known to be found off the now known bath sheds, which is the original Kansas King. This is a 297 gross set. The biggest side is 143 inches. Just a phenomenal set of sheds. This one here was found very fresh, and this one here laid until like June, if I remember right, when the local farmer was working the field. He found it, or it was laying right off to the side, maybe in the grass. But this is the antler here that Derry Rozier was his name. Justin Rozier, my buddy's brother, Derry, and this is the antler he was holding in front of the hutch. Pretty cool. So anyway, I believe I saw that deer on the school bus. The photographic memory just looked like that tall rack with stuff going off the sides, and very similar to this. So the next year, the big set's picked up by dogs on Thanksgiving Day, which is these antlers here. They grossed 312 to 313, and they would net about 308. And this was the next year after those. Just an unbelievable, super symmetrical, non-typical. One of the most, it's the number 2 set in the world known for sheds. But I mean, what a heavy honker. They're 8.5 pound set. The biggest side's 151 inches. The other side's 141. Just amazing antlers. So anyway, getting back to the story. So those were picked up by the dogs on Thanksgiving Day. Around 1990, that happened in 1990. Around 90, it grew in 89, dropped in 90. This set here, the other smaller set, was 87, grew in 88, or 88, dropped in 89, I'm sorry. And then 89 to 90. Well, in about 1993, 92, Odie, we folded a bunch of flyers for his books to help him, promote the book and get it out there. My parents and I, we did like 7,500 flyers, just folded them, had to drop them in the mail. We did that, and he had came down one time to visit us, and we were talking, and I'd said to him, I said, why don't we go over there and just drive around and go talk to some people, see if we can't turn up some antlers. Because I'd bought antlers from farmers over there in the past when I was a young kid. So we go over there, and he wanted to go to this one guy's house. This is a long time ago. This is 20 plus years ago. And he wanted to go to this one guy's house that was kind of about a half mile to the southeast of where the sheds were found. And we go there, and this guy didn't have any antlers, but he said he had seen that deer in his years prior. He remembered it. It was incredible, non-typical. So we go back. He had said, you need to go back to the house, down the long drive that goes to the base of the hill. Well, that was the Dobson family. And we get back there and we talk to the mother, the grandmother. The husband had passed, and she said, you need to talk to my son-in-law. She said, he did find a big set of sheds, just recently. Like I said, this was around 92, 93. And it could have been 94. But anyway, so she was like, he found this big set of sheds, and his name is Eugene. So she gave us the information, and they lived right down, they lived like 600 yards away to the east. We didn't know that, but he was working at a hydraulic company, doing like fittings and stuff like that for hydraulic lines. So we go over to the house, and the wife came to the door, and she said, yeah, he's working. He won't be back till probably 4. And this happened around 1 o'clock. So we went and kind of messed around, and in the meantime, the wife had called the hydraulic company and said, there's a couple people here who'd like to look at your antlers. And I guess he wasn't busy, and he came home about an hour early. And we went to the door, knocked again. I can't remember what happened exactly. I think we got it. We went back there. We seen a vehicle pull in, I think it was, and we went up there and said, well, maybe he's home. And sure enough, he was. And he came to the door and he said, hey, you the guys, looking for the antlers? And we were like, yeah, Odie was like, yeah. Odie did most of the talking. So he said one minute and he comes carrying out this white set of antlers that had some cracks to them. And when I saw him, I told Odie, I said, that's the bass sheds. He's like, can't be. And I'm like, Odie, it looks just like it. I mean, everything to me was identical. It's just you could tell the deer was aged. And I'd picked up a lot of sheds in my life to that date and several years off of deer, and I'd seen them. When they would get old, they just started getting more pointy, weird, sharp, squiggly. And to me, it was just all the signs of an old deer. So this is the set we were looking at. Is this set here? I made a post of it the other day, and it's that. I think most people recognize it. This here. So this is the set here that the Goslin guy had, Eugene Goslin. So we ended up buying them that day, and we got them home. And the story was, he said that he was chopping wood and found them. See, the hill there the hill comes down to a flat plateau kind of, and there's a bunch of little thorn trees and locust trees, maybe 100 yards of that prior to the base of the hill. And it's a perfect area because I actually did look for sheds there. This is an absolute perfect area for them to lay in. The sun always shined on that area. It laid just at the right angle that the sun coming up hit it. And even as it was going to in January, your sun's in the southern part of the sky, it would even still hit it. It was a perfect area for them to bed and just winter there. So he's chopping wood and finds this set of sheds right inside the edge of the field in the grassy area where they were staging. And they had laid a solid year, maybe two. So anyway, the sheds, he takes them home. He realized, oh, those are pretty big. Well, you think about it. This set here dropped in 89. That set grew in 89, dropped in 90. So this is from 88. A 3-year gap, maybe a 4-year. That deer likely, he was probably getting close to peaked out there. So he likely was regressing. The crowns of those antlers on that other set are 3 inches across where it shed off the head. It's the biggest I've ever seen. I don't have one in my whole collection as big as those. I don't have nothing that measures 3 inches across the actual shed area, not to the outside edge, the actual shed area. I got like 2 6/8 or 2 3/4 would be about my biggest, which is, these are actually really big because they got 6/6 bases on the bigger set. But yeah, you kind of see, they're good sized crowns. But this part here on on the one was 3 inches across. Just incredible. So we bought them. I kept them for a while. Then Odie said, I'd really like to buy your side. And, I was a pretty young kid, and he made me an offer, and I was like, yeah, take them, they didn't mean as much to me then as they obviously would now. So that's how that went down on those sheds. Now, this is where the story on the bass sheds and this deer get very interesting. One of my buddies, Sean, went to college at K-State. And one of his classmates' parents bought 40 acres of ground right above where these were found. And they had moved during this time frame. They had purchased that ground. They had moved also to Colorado. And they were out there for several years on work, and the kids went with them, but they kept their house here in Manhattan, Kansas, so that the kids could come back, go to college, and stay in the house. Well, when they bought the property, this would have been in the early 90s, around 91, 92 at the latest. This is amazing. So they buy this property, they go up and walk it, they find a giant non-typical antler right by the cedar tree. It had like 20 points on one side. Don't know just like 20 points on one side. And they walk a little more, and there's the other one laying out in more of an open area. From my understanding, not more than 30 to 50 yards apart. So they pick them up and they take them back home. Now keep in mind, this all happened prior to my buddy Sean going to college. He did an essay. I don't remember exactly what it was in college, but he did an essay regarding deer antlers and stuff. From my understanding, this is what I'm remembering. And he took this book. This is another book that Odie put out a little after this one. And he's talking about deer antlers in his little essay deal he had to do. And he's holding this book up, and he tells where these antlers were found. And the classmate said, "Those look just like the antlers we found above the Manhattan airport." And my buddy Sean, he was like, "Really? When? How many points?" He said they had 40 points on them. They were unbelievable. He's like, "Oh my God." So Sean calls me. He's like, "Dude," he's like, "you ain't going to believe this." And he's telling me all this. So we're like, we got to see these antlers. Well, I was like, I got to see these antlers. And Sean was like, "But you're not going to believe the rest of the story," he told me. I'm like, "Well, what's that?" He's like, when they had moved, when they came back, they did a bunch of cleaning. The mother was in the garage cleaning, and these antlers were up on, the non-typical 40-point sheds were up on top of some cabinets, cupboards, whatever they had there. She took them down, put them in the rolled out dumpster, so she didn't think no one cared about them. She put them in there, took them to the edge of the street, and they're gone. They're in the Manhattan dump somewhere. When I found this out, I called the Manhattan dump. I talked to a guy that had worked over 20 years, and he said, "I've seen a lot of antler come through here, but nothing that would be what you're describing." Unfortunately, they probably got compressed in the trash truck and they got buried in all the junk. I mean, it's an unbelievable story. It's sad, but it's like there could have been 4 complete sets off of this deer. There likely was 4, and it would have been the biggest series of whitetail antlers off of one deer, hands down. I mean, you got, at the time when these were found, they were the world record. These sheds were the world record non-typical whitetail sheds and would have been the world record hunter kill. So it's really sad that a tremendous set of sheds that had 40 points on them, got trashed. So as time went by, I'd ask people. I even found out people that had worked there that had, retired or, just quit. I contacted a lot of people about this. And to no avail. Nobody ever saw them that they know of. They remember one guy had a real nice rack. He said, I'll show it to you. I went in and saw it. It was like a 170-inch deer that someone had put the whole mount in the trash. So anyway, that's kind of my story on it. And like I said, these antler here, this other set that was discovered when Odie and I went and walked for these. This here, not walked, but we drove over there. I'm sorry. I'm getting my mind's going too fast ahead here. But that's the set, there'll be the old set that laid for a year or two. And you can clearly see, especially on this antler, I mean, you can see if you hold it like this and you look at that, oh gosh, it's kind of hard. I got to change this deal. Hold on. Okay, should be doing right here. So look at this. So you see those antlers. If you see, so this inline right here on that screen, you can see it. It's higher on this antler here, but there in that picture, it laid down. I truly believe this is the deer. Look at that. Look at all the burr points. It's all there. He's just super old. At least that's what I think. Chances of there being two deer that big in the same area, I mean, is it impossible? No. The 90s and 80s were crazy times. But the fact that it looks like this, and obviously that is a very old deer, I would, lean towards it being 100%, or at least 90%, this deer. But, so I don't know where those antlers are nowadays. Odie's very hard to get a hold of. I've left messages and to no avail. So we just go from there. Maybe one day they'll turn up. But as I said, this here is actually the original Kansas King. The Kansas King typical is the typical Kansas King, but these are the actual original first Kansas King, which is kind of cool. So hopefully you guys, hopefully that story makes sense. I appreciate you tuning in. And I feel like I'm leaving out part of this story, but hopefully I'm not. We went through the trash truck. I saw the deer, I believe, on hoof going up I-70. I really do. I'm just not saying that. This rack, it just, when you're in the antlers so much and you think they're so cool, you kind of have this photographic memory and you just remember. And I remember that thing went straight up. It had stuff off the side and it just had non-typicals all in its rack. And I believe it would have been that rack. It could have even been that rack. But more than likely this one. Just amazing. And it was raining and the antlers wet looked really dark. And one more thing I'll add. I talked to a bow hunter who hunted the property right where I believe I saw that deer. That deer on going up on the school bus. And he said he saw a monster high rack non-typical while he was hunting there that he couldn't get a shot at more than once. And he said it had points going everywhere, 30 points or more. And I just can't help but think it was this deer. And it is not far from where these sheds were found, and that deer's range easily could have been there. All he has to do is cross the river and come up the ridge a mile and a half. So, you guys have a good morning. I hope you enjoyed this. But this is my story regarding the now Bath sheds and original Kansas King. So, hope you all have a great day. Have a safe weekend, and we'll catch you on the next go around. Thank you.